By the way, I have a question. What is quorum? How many is quorum?
Quorum is 3 members from each interest group. So we would need 3 from industry ag, 3 from environmental, and 3 from city interest group.
Wow, and you keep track of that, huh?
Yes, I have a list here. So when I call roll, I have it categorized.
I don't see that many bodies, but okay. All right, let's get started. Welcome to the April 2nd, 2024 Citizens Advisory Committee of the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District. Good morning, and I will do my best to move things along. I've been told we need to be out of here by 11. Before we, wait a minute, what time is it?
10:30.
Oh, yeah. Before we begin, there are some important guidelines. Please silence your communications, cell phones, whatever. During the meeting, all public participants will be placed on mute by the host. Public members will not be able to mute or unmute manually. Audio for members of the public will be unmuted once they are recognized to make a public comment. I will call the meeting to order. No gavel. Meeting call to order. Roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Cunha. Mr. Clark.
Here.
Laura Brown. Donald Harrell. Amy Lopes. Here. Roger Hostel.
Here.
Chris Savage.
Here.
Fernando Rios.
Here.
Casey Austin Tibbetts. John Sanders. Kelly Deming. Ashley Nebeker. Nick DeHart. Denise Holmes. Here. Ned Leba.
Here.
Jamie Agers. Here. Mary Fast. Scott Robertson. Orchel Cryer.
Here.
Kayla Morrow. Here. Jeff Troost.
Here.
Jose Delgadillo.
Here.
Ben Cantu.
Here.
Richard O'Brien.
Here.
Dennis Medeiros.
Here.
Through the chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Pledge of Allegiance. Ned, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Any corrections or additions to the minutes? North? South? Central? All right. Minutes approved as submitted.
We need to call for public comments on the minutes, please. Are there any
Okay.
public comments on the minutes in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Any public comment on the minutes in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment on the minutes? Seeing none and none online.
All right, thank you. At this time, we will have comments from the public on matters not on the agenda. It is requested that no comments be made during this period on items on the agenda. Public may make comments on each CAC agenda item during the time allowed for public comments on each item. Attention is called to the fact that the CAC is prohibited by law from taking any action on discussion of matters that are not on the agenda. Clerk?
Are there any public comments in Bakersfield?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any public comments in Modesto?
No public comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment? Seeing none, and then online.
All right, thank you. All right, first item on the agenda is chair comments. I have no comments, other than to welcome everyone. Executive Director.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and hope everybody's doing well this week. Just a couple of updates related to the board meeting of March 21st. Just wanted to let the CAC members know and the public know about some of the actions that were taken by the board at that meeting. One of them, it's actually on the agenda today, so I won't cover it. The air topics report, you'll hear from staff on that a little bit later on. On the agenda, there were a couple of other items I think of interest. There was the accepting of up to $2 million from the state for a program that I know that the CAC has heard quite a bit about in the past. It's a valley-wide clean air rooms residential air filtration incentive program. So basically, what we do with this program is if you're a low-income household or in a disadvantaged community in the valley, you're eligible for a free air purifier that you could use when, for example, there's like a wildfire event or some other elevated air quality conditions. And by doing so, you'd be able to protect your household from the impacts of, say, that smoke. So we were able to successfully receive up to $2 million from the state to continue supporting that effort. The board also allocated and we're moving forward with an innovative kind of a new program that we'll see how this year goes with it. It's the fireworks, or the alternatives to fireworks pilot incentive program. So basically working with organizations throughout the valley to try out some new technology, as 4th of July celebrations or other types of events are going on, to reduce the use, say, of fireworks, maybe use some of the new technology, drones and other technologies, to still come up with a celebratory event, but perhaps do it with less pollution related to fireworks. There's been a desire to look at that. There's actually quite a bit of interest throughout the valley. I think we were all a little surprised to see the level. I think there's 25 projects that all up and down the valley for a variety of different events that are really interested in trying out some of this new technology and just seeing how it goes and hopefully continuing to make for a fun and rewarding activity for our community. So the board did move forward with that program and allocated the necessary funding to support those projects. Lastly, there were amendments made to Rule 4905. It's called a natural gas-fired fan type central furnace rule. There's a category of furnace in this rule related to manufactured homes, mobile homes, that needs an extension actually due to where technology is. So the board adopted that extension to allow sufficient time, for those manufacturers that provide those technologies to have a product available that would meet the rule requirements. So there's added flexibility with the action that the board took. And that concludes the updates that I have, Mr. Chair and members, and happy to take any questions.
Any questions of the director in the north? Excuse me, we do have one.
I do. I know that for the clean room air purifiers, only certain individuals can get those for free. Is there some way that some of the other residents can purchase them?
Yes, that's a great question. Absolutely. So we've actually, to that end, and I think with a similar question that came up during the board meeting, we've already created, but we're actually continuing to expand. There's a page that we have that is all about the technology, the things you can do to protect yourself. It's not only about, say, being a low-income household or other qualifiers. There's other information on there, and these are readily available. Even Costco or any hardware store has a variety of these available. So they are absolutely available for anybody to purchase. Right now, as far as eligibility goes, it's a streamlined process where you through a variety of means in demonstrating that you're a low-income household are able to qualify as a direct ship to your home for one of these filters. So it is pretty streamlined on that end of it, but if you don't qualify in that manner, many of these are available, and we do have a landing page, which I'm happy to send out to the CAC members if you wanted to share it. That has more information about different things you can do to protect yourself, including purchasing one of these for your home.
Thank you.
Any more questions? South? Central?
I have a question.
Yes.
How significant is the air impact from 4th of July fireworks that it justifies doing the looking into the alternatives?
That's a great question, Mr. Troost. The question, I'll expand it just a little bit because I think there's the 4th of July, and then we also have impacts around New Year's when there's a lot of celebratory fireworks that go on. The impacts are significant. And it's a combination of residential activity, which I'm sure everybody can attest is quite ubiquitous and pervasive, I think, in our communities. It spikes heavily for not only on the 4th of July that evening, it kind of carries over into the next day and even beyond sometimes, depending on the meteorological conditions. If there's stagnation, they can actually hover for quite a bit of time. And it's not just PM 2.5. PM 2.5, which is something that we all work on very hard to continue reducing, does spike a lot, but it's also the type of PM 2.5. There's a lot of metals and other things that are emitted from fireworks that are a bit different, say, than some of the other types that you may see from other types of activities. So there's a long list of toxic air contaminants that basically are emitted at the same time. So this program fits into kind of a broader discussion that the board is having about how to continue supporting efforts to reduce, particularly the use of illegal fireworks. I mean, that's another set of issues that is a big topic, not just in the Valley, but throughout the state and the country. In this case, maybe trying to encourage even more people to go to central events. So perhaps you're reducing some of the residential use. So maybe there's a win-win. And then at the event itself, maybe doing it in a way where it's also even less emitting. So it's part of, I would say, ongoing discussion about how to continue addressing firework use, but also understanding the complexities that go into it, right? Because I think there's a deep history as to why where the current setup is the way it is. A lot of charitable work that goes into distribution of fireworks, a big fundraising opportunity, a lot of sensitivities around that. But when we talked about this back at our November study session, the board study session, a lot of conversation. We actually had the fire chief and the police chief were also part of the conversation because of the safety issues that are prevalent during Independence Day celebration, whether it's fire, structural fire, loss of life, veteran population impacts, as well as dogs and cats and pets and other. I mean, there's a variety of issues that I think communities are trying to basically now tackle through innovative, probably a collection of things over time.
If I may, our city, the city of Tulare, has been trying to deal with this issue for years now, and it's a never-ending battle because, as you indicated, there's a strong tradition in what we're dealing with. I had an occasion a few years ago where I had to drive later, which was like 10:30 to 11 o'clock from the city of Tulare up to the city of Fresno to drop my mother-in-law off. And it was a fireworks show from beginning to end late at night. And it was just kind of indicative of what we're dealing with. And I don't know how you change that. But I have been, Mr. Chair, if I may, I have been looking for the opportunity to at least discuss this aspect, which is kind of a twist on this thing. We are worried about the emissions that come from fireworks. Yet at the same time, I know people in Tulare and I believe people in Fresno are all dealing with the fact that if you want to drive on Highway 41 from this area over to the Central Coast, Caltrans is working on a bridge just outside of Stratford that is causing everybody on State Route 41 to divert anywhere from 15 minutes to a half hour to get around that bridge. And the emissions that come from that have to be significant. And I haven't heard anything from the Air Pollution Control District or any indication from Caltrans as to why just doing repairs or replacements to a bridge has to take 6 months to do. That, to me, and I know you don't have anything to do with that, but I have to have a formed event. That to me seems incredible. And I know I was trying to beat Mr. Cunha to this, you know what I'm talking about? So,
Excuse me.
in any event, I've done that. So is somebody trying to excuse me, or they're trying to?
No, I don't want to cut you off, but I have to. There is an area in the agenda for you to make those comments and ask those questions. This item right now is the executive director providing us with an update or a report.
Okay, that's fine. I'll reserve that and repeat it then during comments.
Thank you.
Good job.
Through the chair.
Yes,
Okay, quick question. How long is the extension, Mayor?
The question was, how long is the extension under the furnace rules? 3 years. Thank you.
thank you. I do have a comment with respect to the fireworks. My question is, when is it all going to end? Now we're picking on the fireworks, and it's an American tradition. It's been around a long time. Yeah, you know, everybody wants to shoot off and celebrate 4th of July. But when does it end? Are we going to have fireworks that don't produce smoke, don't have metals? Are we just going to rely on drones, and how many drones? And then we're going to block the sky out because the sun won't be able to go through all the drones. And, you know, it's got to stop. It's really got to stop. Anyway, all right. Thank you, Samir. Item number 8, update on attainment plans and rules. Emily.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee. Thank you so much for having me here this morning. My name is Emily Nealand, and I am the program manager of the air quality planning team here at the district. Here to provide you with a couple of updates. I do have a separate presentation for item number 11, which will go into more detail on some of our planning projects. So I'm just going to touch on 2 rule development projects that we're working on currently. The first is for Rule 2520, which is our rule for federally mandated operating permits. We are currently working on proposed amendments to this rule due to recent EPA actions to remove emergency defense provisions from Title V operating permit regulations. So we are required to remove these provisions from our rules. So we are moving forward with a rule amendment for that purpose. We did host a public workshop on March 21st to receive some public feedback on this proposed amendment. And we do plan to publish our proposed rule here within the coming month. And then the second one, Samir touched already, Rule 4905, natural gas fired van type central furnaces. As he mentioned, we're extending the emissions fee period to September 30th, 2025 for manufactured homes. So the governing board did approve that at our most recent meeting, and we have transmitted that package to CARB to be transmitted through to EPA for inclusion in the state implementation plan. So those are my updates, very brief on our rule development projects. Again, I'll be providing a more lengthy presentation on our plan projects here in just a couple of items, but happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions? North? South? Central? Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Item 9, verbal report from the CARB. Laura. There you are.
Hi, good morning, Mr. Chair and CAC members. This is Laura Carr. I'm an air pollution specialist at the California Air Resources Board. So I'll be providing the CARB update today. Very, very brief. CARB did not hold a hearing in the month of March. So I'll just direct you to the item in your packets, which is just a listing of some upcoming workshops and, as always, a link to some trainings that are available on the CARB website. But that's all I have today. No hearing in March for CARB.
Should I ask for questions?
Yes, Mr.
No.
Chairman. Manuel here, there's no way I can escape that discussion. Laura, thank you. Last month, we had a pretty lengthy dissertation, a doctoral, or maybe a doctorate degree of some type going on there. Where are we? We are in the month of April 1st, April 2nd. CARB extended and I thought we were going to have somebody from the bus and truck rule. I am very disappointed that they're not present. Apparently, they don't have the same Zoom communications that we have with you and with the entire CAC. There is no answer to what's going to happen at the end of April upon allowing Tier 4 trucks to go in and remove containers out of the ports. By now, it's a disaster. It's a mess. It's a freeway to nowhere. We can't unload the ships fast enough because we can't move the containers. You have 18,000 trucks in Long Beach and LA. You have 235 electrics. How in the world are you going to move those containers? I'm greatly concerned because of my industry is getting ready to do fruit. Fruit cannot wait in a hot container and sit there, wait. The buyers aren't going to accept it. But I really thought today, April 2nd, that CARB would have come back to us with somebody. You have, 50 or 60 staff in the bus and truck rule, maybe more than that. You got Riverside into this thing, all those staff. Our businesses, but our farmers have no idea what you're going to do to us on April 30th when you shut off the Tier 4 trucks going into that port, and you're going to mandate 100% electric. If we're asking for a suicide, I guess we've got it coming. And I guess we need to have the businesses go under, rural communities lose jobs, products go into dump. We dump it over in the ocean, I guess, because it's rotten, because we can't move it. But I am deeply disappointed, Mr. Chairman, that they did not listen from the last meeting. So, Laura, if you can please pass that on. I'm not done with this issue because my farmers in rural communities are going to get hammered in end of April, May, when they can't move this container out of a port, when you don't even have the electric trucks even available. Oakland is 3,000 trucks a day go through that port moving containers, 18,000 in Long Beach and LA. And you only have 45 and I guess in Oakland and 235 in Long Beach and LA. And oh, by the way, I guess they do catch fire. They still burn for 3 or 4 weeks. They haven't figured out how to bury them because there's no dirt around those ports. It's all concrete and asphalt. So, but I am very disappointed. I'm disappointed in the chair, and I'm disappointed in the sub deputy directors who are in charge of the bus and truck row. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Manuel. But, second. Yeah, just a second. Laura, are you still there? There. What's your response to that?
Yes, yeah, thank you for the comment. I guess my response would be to reiterate the offer that I made, which is to be involved in the agenda setting process for these CAC meetings. If this is an item that the CAC wishes to have come before it, that's fine. I'm happy to help liaise with the appropriate truck and bus staff here at CARB to make sure that that's an item that is on the agenda and can come before the CAC.
I have a problem with that. There's only 29 days or 30 days left. And who do you think is going to receive all the calls, the negative calls from the farmers and the truckers and the shippers on those spoiling fruits and other delays that are going to occur. Someone at CARB, I'm sure, has an answer as to why it's not going to work effectively at the end of the month, and why we haven't had that discussion at our level. And there's only 30 days left, and you and I and everybody in this room and in the state knows that it's not going to happen, and it's not going to work if it ends in 30 days. I agree with Manuel. It needs to be dealt with, and it should have been dealt with a long time ago. Electric trucks are fine, but if you only have 230 of them at Long Beach, it's not going to work. So we need an answer. We need an answer quickly. Thank you. Manuel, or
Richard.
Richard.
Okay, I want to continue on what Manuel was talking about. Mr. Cooney, you're spot on, but that's just from the trucking. What else, Laura, that you know about is that ships coming in and out of ports can only be serviced by electric vessels. How many do we have? Long Beach is going to be backed up worse than it ever has before. I addressed it with the Lieutenant Governor. She told me that, and she's the Economic Development Officer for the state of California. She said she has no control over CARB, that if I wanted to, I would write a letter and she would help endorse it. That's not a solution either. I believe you can get the Lieutenant Governor at one of these meetings. I believe that you should get the head of CARB, and they can have a discussion on how they propose to move the greatest volume of goods and services from and to California. Long Beach, Oakland are only two. You still have Port Hueneme and some of the others that are minor ports that are also affected. So you're virtually stopping. Then at the same time, you're saying to Mexico, I'm sorry, we don't want your goods because your trucks are no good. Sorry, none of this is going to work. Not now. It can in the future, but you have to gradually get there and not mandate it and just sit back and say, oh, well, maybe I'll put it on an agenda. Get the people that make decisions and explanations here, not only in front of us, but in front of the board itself. Thank you.
Comments, Laura? No.
Yes, I will absolutely convey those comments up my management chain, and I'll make sure that those comments are expressed.
Okay. My only closing comment is that unless CARB does something quickly, it's going to be a death wish for CARB, because this state is not going to stand for a shutdown of the economy. And that's exactly what's going to happen at the end of the month if those trucks are not moving. Thank you. Any comments? North, south, central? Item 10, District's Annual Air Toxics Report. Seth.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Seth Lane, and I'm a program manager in the district's technical services department. And today I'll be presenting the district's 2023 annual air toxics report. So the state and federal governments have identified over 1,700 substances that, when suspended in the air, can end up in your body through various pathways and can cause a risk to your health. These substances, at sufficient concentrations and exposure, can potentially impact human health. These impacts can vary, but when dealing with air toxics, we're talking about health impacts such as cancer risk, long-term chronic risk, or short-term acute risk. Some of the more common air toxics examples are diesel particulate matter, benzene, hexavalent chromium, and formaldehyde. These toxic pollutants are not the same as the criteria pollutants, those for which EPA has established national ambient air quality standards, like nitrogen oxides and PM 2.5. But importantly, even small quantities of air toxics are distributed through the air we breathe, and they get created by a variety of sources, from cars and trucks, industrial operations, and consumer products. To address toxics in the valley, the district operates a multifaceted, comprehensive program that addresses toxics on various fronts. We refer to this approach as the district's Integrated Air Toxics Program. And within the Integrated Air Toxics Program, we combine local, state, and federal requirements under one umbrella. The first one to mention is that the district implements the state's air toxics hotspots regulation. And this addresses health risks from air toxics from existing operations in the valley. We also evaluate new and modified sources of air toxic emissions, making sure we don't allow new health risk situations to be created from new or expanding operations. We implement a large number of regulations designed to reduce risk from air toxics on a facility basis as well. We assist land use agencies by providing our expertise related to addressing and mitigating potential air toxic risks from new development projects under CEQA. And last on the list here, which is a major component of our integrated approach, are the clean air projects funded through the district's grants and incentives programs that have resulted in major emissions reductions, including toxics such as diesel particulate matter. To address air toxics from existing stationary source facilities, the district implements the state's AB 2588 air toxics hotspots regulation. Using the state's program guidelines, facilities submit plans and reports that characterize and quantify their air toxic emissions, which are reviewed by the district. Using that information, the district performs a prioritization, which is a conservative screening level health risk assessment. The results of the prioritization puts facilities in one of three categories based on the potential the facility emissions may create health risk, either low, intermediate, or high priority. Low and intermediate priority facilities require no further assessment under the state regulation at that time. Intermediate priority facilities are required to submit updated air toxic information on an ongoing schedule for reevaluation. High priority facilities require further assessment since they may create a health risk. To make that final determination, a more refined health risk assessment is required using complex and super conservative computer modeling of their potential to create a health risk. And based on the results of the health risk assessment, a public meeting to inform the neighbors of the potential risk from the facility may be required. And the highest risk facilities would have to make modifications to their operations to reduce the risk they're creating to a point where they are no longer at that level of risk. This slide provides a summary of our recent work in the program as we continue to assess facilities in the Valley. Since 2016, we have completed assessments for more than 7,400 Valley facilities through 2023. Of those, more than 5,600 are conditionally exempt under the state regulation from further assessment at this time, and more than 1,600 are intermediate priority facilities requiring periodic update summary evaluations. There were 144 high priority facilities, and through a refined health risk assessment, they were determined to be lower intermediate risk facilities. And there are 21 high priority facilities that are currently being evaluated with a refined health risk assessment. All facilities categorized as intermediate priority or risk have continuing emissions reporting requirements under the program to ensure the facility is reassessed if necessary. So the previous few slides on hotspots are all about existing sources and their emissions, but regarding new equipment and new sources of emissions, we analyze the potential health risk of every single operation for which we are proposing to issue a permit if that operation emits any amount of air toxics. And we assist lead agencies to do the same thing under CEQA. For stationary sources, we do this with a risk management review, or RMR. And this process is similar to the prioritization, screening, and health risk assessment process I described for hotspots. But for new or modified sources, we utilize worst case potential emissions since the equipment is not yet in operation. We perform this analysis for all proposed increases in toxic emissions, and very health conservative worst case conditions are assumed in our models, such as potential emissions, which are the maximum allowed emissions levels, stagnant air conditions, and long-term exposure. And if the operation proposed cannot pass the risk assessment with the best available control technology for air toxics, it's not an approvable project as proposed. We also implement a large number of regulations that are aimed at specific types of facilities or operations to further reduce air toxic emissions in the Valley. The district is responsible for implementing, through our permitting and inspection processes, local, state, and federal rules and regulations that reduce air toxics. The state regulations are called Air Toxic Control Measures, or ATCMs, and apply to a fairly wide variety of sources, with a few mentioned on this slide here. And the federal regulations are generally called MACT standards, for Maximum Achievable Control Technology. There are approximately 150 MACT standards for various source categories, including aerospace coatings and wood preserving. The district also focuses on incentive grant programs that bring about reductions in NOx and PM, but also achieve collateral reductions in air toxics as a result of the clean air projects. The district has administered more than $6 billion toward clean air projects in the Valley, resulting in more than 271,000 tons of emissions reduced. Key components of these emission reductions are the multitude of grant programs for diesel engines. For example, thanks to replacing or retrofitting trucks, tractors, buses, and ag irrigation engines, there have been over 35,000 diesel engines replaced, resulting in significant amounts of diesel particulate matter reductions in the Valley. This is important because diesel exhaust particulate is one of the most potent carcinogenic air toxics, so reductions in diesel particulate matter is critical to reducing the public's health risk. Through these incentive grant programs and the other efforts mentioned here today to reduce air toxics in the Valley, there has been a major reduction in cancer risk from breathing air in the Valley. One indicator of the success is demonstrated in CARB's 2023 California Air Toxics Assessment, or CATA for short, which was just released. CARB's CATA assessment uses a detailed emissions inventory, meteorological data, and an integrated modeling approach for the major air basins in California. The figures on this slide represent the downward cancer risk trend in the Valley, where there has been a 55% decrease in cancer risk from air toxics from 2012 to 2017. It's important to note that diesel particulate matter continues to be the primary air toxic contributing to the Valley's cancer risk, and the primary contributor of diesel emissions in the Valley is from mobile sources under state and federal jurisdiction. So as mentioned, DPM from mobile sources is the primary contributor to air toxics cancer risk in the Valley, which total more than 85% of the risk. VOCs contributed a smaller portion of the cancer risk, including benzene and formaldehyde, which are emitted primarily from gasoline-driven light-duty passenger vehicles. Heavy metals also contribute a small fraction of the risk, including cadmium, nickel, and lead, which are emitted from miscellaneous mobile sources and certain industrial stationary sources. There is another front related to emission inventory and air toxics that came about through AB 617 that requires the state to develop a uniform statewide system of annual reporting of criteria and toxic emissions. Emissions inventory data is critical to understanding emission sources and related health risks. As a result, CARB created the Regulation for the Reporting of Criteria, Air Pollutants, and Toxic Air Contaminants, or CTR, which is a newer regulation requiring statewide enhanced reporting of facility stationary source emissions, including criteria and toxic emissions. CARB's implementation schedule in the regulation is a phased approach. The first phase, which already happened, included the largest facilities based on mass emissions, and subsequent phases are based on facility type or sector type and activity level. The district is already and will continue to be implementing the requirements of the new regulation for Valley facilities and sending compiled inventory data over to CARB. So as part of the integrated air toxics approach, the district has an important role in helping businesses understand and comply with the many air toxic rules and requirements. So we work with applicants who need assistance in reducing their potential air toxic impacts from new sources of emissions. We continue to assist land use agencies in the Valley to address air toxic impacts under CEQA. We engage the public through community involvement. We provide bilingual notices of significant permitting actions and bilingual notifications under AB 2588. And also under the umbrella of AB 617, the district is continuing to work with CARB and Valley facilities to implement the newer enhanced criteria and toxic emissions inventory reporting regulation. And with that, this concludes the presentation, so I'll turn it back over to the chair for any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? The South?
I do have a question.
Please.
There's a good report you gave and everything, all kinds of statistics and numbers and all that. What's the end game on this report? If we were to implement everything you did, you know, like reducing cancer, you said went down 55% and all that. But isn't it because of smoking was a big issue at the time? And then people quit smoking and that helped reduce the cancer risk and a good part of it. But if we were to do the diesel mission to reduce it down to the acceptable level, what would have to be done if you had a magic wand to achieve that? What was it going to take to get it down to what the state is calling acceptable levels? What is it going to do to the industry we have here? What would it take it down to make it happen? Yes, we have all electric vehicles, but we're not there with the technology yet. But it's coming. But what is it going to take to get this so we can resolve it? And what's the actual end game on this? That's all I have to say on that. What would be your answer?
Well, I thanks for the question. I can't speak for the state, and so a little hard to. I'll take that as a comment and a question, right? Because I think there is certainly some sentiments I think built into your question around. I think the concern you have, right, around what appears to be, concerns around high cost and what the question is, what is the end game? So this report, what it does is it provides an update on a variety, right, of local, state, and federal. There's the parts that we do, there's the parts that the state does, and the parts the federal government does as well. And the main purpose of the report is to show the progress that has been made. And I hope there's a takeaway here that because of the role of business, because of the role of agriculture in replacing, say, diesel pumps, in putting in controls at facilities, we've seen a tremendous reduction actually in air pollution and toxic air contaminants. And I think that's one of the big takeaways of the report. Now, in terms of what does it take to get to zero emissions, and that's an ongoing conversation, right? Whether you're talking about mobile sources, whether you're talking about other sectors, that's a much bigger discussion that I'm not sure we can answer today. It's going to be, I suspect, of interest to the CAC into the future. And but the one thing that Seth did not mention too is when we prepare this report, we also release it to our health officers throughout the county so that they're also aware of this progress that we're making and where we are with the ongoing work that goes on with our facilities, with our business community, with our public agencies. So part of the purpose of the report is to share it so that the community at large is aware of this effort and what the remaining challenges are. And so I know it doesn't fully answer your question, but I also think that's a bigger question that's going to be a part of an ongoing discussion with the CAC, not just by us, but also with the CARB and others that are involved in that.
What was that? South or north? South. Okay, Central. Comments from Central?
Just a question. Obviously, anything that can be done to reduce traffic from diesel-powered vehicles would be a good thing from the standpoint of your report. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. There's been reductions already, and that's something that the report shows, but that's still the primary contributor to air toxics cancer in the valleys from the on-road mobile emissions from those major roadways. And
generally speaking, there's been efforts to deal with private business and business at large in trying to get these reductions and have regulations as it relates to that, as indicated in your report, correctly? Is that correct?
Yes.
What about intergovernment agencies and their efforts to reduce traffic that would cause this, the emissions that we're talking about? I mean, does that take place?
So as far as like the planning, like the land use agencies planning traffic routes and things like that?
Or Samir, what about, say, the Air Pollution Control District coordinating with Caltrans to not see that certain emissions occur, something along that line?
Yeah, so if what you're trying to ask is whether or not we can reduce idling emissions on the 41 with a Stratford connection, I'll just be more direct.
I'll deal with that in item 15, but
yeah.
I want to stay on the agenda
just to get to the point here,
which is this report. So.
Yeah, but just to get to the point here, we do interact within our capacity, and I think we're very accurate in stating that we actually don't play a direct role in causing traffic jams on the 41 or the 99. Now, what we do though is when there are major roadway projects going on, there's a variety of regulatory context where if there's CEQA involved, for example, in supporting, say, a highway project, we will engage with Caltrans, with the COG and others that are involved in that project, we'll try to, come up with a streamlined process for moving forward with, with whatever that is, make sure that they have all their ducks in a row when it comes to the air quality impact mitigation. So we definitely engage, on that level, but we unfortunately do not control, the pace by which, say, a contractor works on a road project.
Thank you.
Samir, just a second. Samir? Yes, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
And I'm familiar with the funding process for highway projects and stuff like that. Does air pollution control provide funds or contribute funds to roadway projects?
No, those are typically federal funds that pay for those projects.
Well, there are state funds
We
involved as well.
And state funds as well, yes.
Yeah.
And actually, and locally generated funds, right, through local, measures that are adopted at the county level or other levels.
You contribute any money to COG?
No.
Well, it seems to me if the highest impact is diesel trucks and vehicles, if we can make the highways more efficient and providing some extra lanes so the traffic can move a little more efficient, you would want to contribute some funds to those projects. Wouldn't that be a much more positive response than working towards putting business out of business?
So, Mr. Chair, if I could respond to that.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Yeah, so I think what often happens with these types of items is that, and I think Seth did a good job of actually outlining some of the efforts that we do, whether it's the incentive programs that we use to replace, say, vehicles with, or the engagement that we have with land use, and I think what we want to do is probably add a section to the report about the fact that we do engage very heavily with our local COGs. We serve on the Regional Policy Council. We advocate jointly with them in Sacramento and DC for all of their needs, including, by the way, the roadway projects that you're talking about. So when I say we don't contribute, I was specifically answering your question about whether or not we fund a major roadway project, but we absolutely are engaging heavily with our local electeds on the valley's needs as related to transportation. And what happens often with these reports or individual items is that we can't go out here and say, this is every single thing that we do all the time to address the transportation. The valley's air quality problems are very complex. It's everything from transportation to the stationary sources to agriculture to transport. We get transport impacts, by the way, from the Bay Area. We get transport impacts from international. We haven't talked about that today, but it's also another impact, another issue that we work to address. So I think over time, as especially newer members kind of engage with us on the variety of things that we do, you're going to start getting, I think, a bigger sense or a broader sense of some of the different efforts that go on as a region to try to address air pollution. And so I think these questions are great because it gives us an opportunity to talk about the engagement that we have with our transportation authorities, the COGs and others, because we actually do work very actively with them to understand their needs and actually try to provide a voice to that as well through whatever we could do. But often, when you're focusing on a very specific issue, you may not, especially if you haven't been on the CSC for a long time, yet have the full breadth of the different things that we do. So I would just want to provide a little bit of an extended answer because I want to assure you that we absolutely do work on, in fact, we say it very plainly and very clearly that transportation emissions are the single biggest challenge in the San Joaquin Valley. And the board works very hard actually to try to address those emissions. Again, with very limited regulatory authority, we don't actually regulate those emissions, but what we can do is try to uplift the valley's voice as we keep hearing about these different concerns and issues that are very, we travel the freeways too, right? Our families here at the Air District are part of the fabric of the same issues that I understand come up here as concerns. And we try to find a role. We have a very specific role within state law, federal law, but we try to maximize our reach within that role to try, and especially with the CSC supporting that through your advice and your counsel. So just wanted to assure you that even though this report doesn't talk about the fact that we try to deal with the transportation issues in the Valley, there absolutely is an effort there. You can look at our legislative platform, you can look at our policy positions, you can look at our involvement on the Regional Policy Council, which is actually in partnership with our transportation agencies, our comments that we provide in various forums, and just as evidence of that ongoing effort.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair? Yes,
Yes.
Mayor, kind of took a little bit. I think for us to, first is that the trucking industry, the farm industry, as far as engines, have come tremendously a long way. From the tier 0 to the tier 4 final, even a discussion about a tier 5, have tremendously reduced the emissions. At the end of the day, if we look at how much the 99 and the I-5 corridor travel by trucks, it's huge because of the movement of goods to provide to all of our cities and even out of state. But I think the SARMAC and the Seacoast studies, we did a lot of research in there, and I appreciate, Samir, the comment about transport, because transport is a big issue of discussions of what comes over the Altamont, what comes in the backside of the South Coast area coming in from the winds, et cetera, et cetera. So I look at the chart on my far right on your wall, and I look at how much we've improved. On Sunday, when I came down from Sacramento, coming at about 7 o'clock, I looked to the west. I can see Mount Diablo, the entire range, all the way to the south. I can see that mountain range. I've never seen that before, in the sense back in the 90s, 2000. So it's just incredible how we have done so much positive of stuff that we can control versus what ARB is controlling. And maybe what ARB tries to control sometimes is great, and then sometimes it's a complete chicken disaster. I won't use the word. There's ladies present and we're at a meeting. I just commend the work that we've done, but also the manufacturers. Yes, the cost has hit our farmers tremendously. It's hit our rural communities. And yes, you've done projects with our local COGs. I know there's cities that have helped to get sweepers, dump trucks, tractors, road graders. They've been a part of our incentive program that the district has provided. And so to me, but the Seacoast and the SARMAP studies did a lot of work and showed how much of everything that was going on. And that was done in the late 90s, early 2000. And Kelly remembers that very well, of what we did. So we knew what to do. So we knew how we planned to get to that chart over there in that wall. But I will say that I think our engine people have stepped forward, and they've come up with a very clean diesel as being for that engine that is dependable. And I can go from one end of the state to the other, and I know I'm going to find fuel. I'm going to be able to leave this state and go into Texas, and I know I'm going to find fuel that I don't have to worry about my electric battery running out, my reefer dying, and now I've got chickens inside the reefer. Who's going to go open the door? Good luck. After it sits there for 7 or 8 hours with no power. So I just want to make a comment, Mr. Chair, that I think our district has done one yeoman's job of what it can handle because of that graph on the wall, but also its efforts it did with the 2 largest studies ever done on PM10 and 2.5. So
okay, thank you, Manuel. Thank you. Ned.
Just very quickly, just more context, what you understand here. Ben brought up, and someone else, just efficiency results in our air, our environment being clearer. It was sort of a famous, I think, physics professor at Cal, more connected with the California Energy Commission, just said, greater efficiency results in a significant reduction in pollution and CO2. So, that's a non-trivial, actually, it's quite an important thought. The other thing that concerns me is when you make these statements, 55% reduction in air toxics cancer risk. I just hope people think of the context of that statement. Look, if we're concerned about, let's say, the incidence of lung cancer or a particular lung cancer, what explains that orthogonally, independently, are 5, 6, 7, 8 factors. Are you smoking? Do you have hereditary problems? Are you exposed to ionizing radiation? Way down the list, I suspect, is exposure to PM 2.5, especially at 12 micrograms per meter cubed. These are very, very, very low potential exposures, I've not seen good science at the level that 12 micrograms per meter cube means anything. So when you say 55% reduction in cancer risk, I have a feeling it's almost nothing. It doesn't mean it isn't 50, it's 55% of a very low number. So I just hope people are mindful about what's going on here. Thank you.
Any other comments? Yes.
Merits for Savage. You mean, because I'm in the audience, but just to try and wrap up what I heard and to try and make this somewhat actionable. You'd made a reference to a comment when you were talking about Seth's presentation, which by the way, Seth, was very good. It's hard to explain 2588 any kind of meaningful way because it's such a hyper technical program. You did a nice job. I think there is some value for the CAC whose mission is supposed to be advising, right? That's what our role is. It is to advise on policy and technical related matters. When we come in and the staff presents on programs like 2588 or the PM program or the toxic, whatever it is, right? Just pick one of the big programs. I think it would be useful to have as a slide or in the bottom of each slide, what are the current rules or activities in place that are supporting, either helping or hurting the broad objective of the program, just to provide context for those that are reading the information. I think if we did that on an ongoing basis for all programs, I think it would help address some of the questions that are being made and also provide context, if you will, for ultimately what I think the board or the district should be seeking from us, which is being an advisory capacity where we have adequate information to advise properly. So if you can give some thought to how that might be possible to do just on an ongoing basis, I think that could be helpful to these conversations. Does that make sense, Samir?
Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
That was succinct. Thank you.
If there's no further questions, I do want to have, Samir, you and your staff, please don't get the impression that I'm opposed or negative towards the work you do. I know you do good work. As a teenager, I remember the days in the morning I would wake up and the sky was brown. I remember driving as a older person into the LA basin and my eyes would be watering as soon as I crossed over the grapevine. So I understand what's taking place, but and Seth, your report was a great report, except that the average person isn't going to understand it. And I think Ned kind of hit the nail on the head. You can give whatever numbers you want, but the number that's missing in your report is how many small businesses were put out of business because of those rules. And I think when I joined this group, that was the position I'm taking as part of my responsibility. I understand, I was a bureaucrat for 35 years. I understand your report, but it misses the other element that's involved, and that's the average person understanding the numbers and what your goal is. So don't take me wrong. I understand what you're saying, and I don't disagree with you. I like waking up in the morning and seeing blue instead of brown in the sky. And I know how we got there. But as I asked on the fireworks, when does it end? If we continue to lower or increase our goal over time, we reach a point where business can't work. The average person can't live. And that's my perspective on your job. So thank you. Next item is receive update on the attainment planning efforts to address federal standards. Emily.
Hello, Ian. Thanks for having me up here a second time. Back to give you an update on some of our planning efforts that we're currently working on. Just a quick background, we do face a number of air quality challenges, a number of which we've talked about today, so I won't loom over it for so long. Topography and meteorology are really moving against us. Often we have a lid over the valley, trapping emissions inside. Number of other challenges, major goods movement, high population growth, pollution transport, wildfires, drought. So because of this, we have to go above and beyond with reducing emissions. PM 2.5 is one of the main pollution sources that we have issues with. They are particles with a diameter of PM 2.5 microns and smaller. They're a mixture of solid particles and liquid droplets in the air, and they're emitted directly or formed indirectly through chemical reactions between gases. As you can see on the slide, this is a graphic of the size of a human hair. The PM 2.5 particles are the small little red circles, so they're very, very small. They can get into the bloodstream, into the lungs, and cause a number of health effects, including respiratory, cardiovascular, and neurological impacts. So because of the impacts of this pollutant, the district governing board has gone above and beyond with adopting numerous attainment plans and control strategies to reduce emissions, specifically stationary source ozone and PM-forming NOx emissions. We've reduced that by over 90% through hundreds of regulatory actions. On the state level, CARB has adopted numerous mobile source emissions controls, and this combined effort represents the nation's toughest emissions control program. We also operate strong incentive programs with over $6.2 billion in public and private investment. And through these efforts, we continue to make major improvements. However, more work is still needed to get the emission reductions needed to meet our targets. This slide depicts our progress with reducing PM 2.5 in the valley. So each of these donuts shows with the red color the days exceeding the PM 2.5 standard during the winter months, and the blue is the days meeting. So you can see in 2002, 2003, we had 39% of days exceeding the standard. With the most recent years, we have 93% of days meeting the standard. So a lot of improvements have been made due to the efforts of all of the regulations that we've adopted in partnership with CARB. One of the main projects that we're currently working on is a revised plan for the 2012 annual PM 2.5 standard. The district and CARB previously adopted a plan to address serious non-attainment requirements for this standard in 2018. However, we withdrew our plan in collaboration with CARB after EPA reversed their proposed approval. In October of this last year, the governing board took action to approve some initial elements for this plan, including the emissions inventory, precursor demonstration, best available control measure analysis, which demonstrates the stringency of our rules and regulations, and new source review certification. So we are still working on developing the remainder of the plan in partnership with CARB to address the remaining Clean Air Act requirements. We have been going through a public process. We're still working to address those remaining requirements. We do plan to schedule an additional public workshop in this month of April with additional updates to your committee, EJAG, and the governing board. We're currently working with CARB to finalize our emission reduction strategies within our respective jurisdiction, and we plan to take the proposed plan to the governing board for consideration in the second quarter of this year. Another major project that we've been working on is a contingency SIP revision for the 2008 and 2015 8-hour ozone standards. For the 2008 standard in 2019, EPA approved our ozone plan for that and conditionally approved our contingency measure requirements. We subsequently amended District Rule 4601 architectural coatings to include a contingency provision. In response to litigation in 2021, EPA withdrew their approval of that measure and triggered sanctions and SIP clocks for the valley. For the 2015 8-hour ozone standard, we most recently, the governing board adopted the plan for that in 2022. However, due to needed EPA guidance on contingency measure requirements and how to address those, the plan did not identify contingency measures at the time. Since then, EPA has published their draft guidance in March of this last year, which has created a path forward for us to address this. So the district and CARB have developed a SIP revision to address contingency measures for both of these standards. We have posted it for 30-day public review and plan to take it to the governing board for consideration in April. District Rule 4601 and CARB smog check program contingency measures address the requirements. And then we're also committing to amend 5 coding categories to include contingency provisions. And then lastly, I just wanted to provide you with an update on the 2024 PM 2.5 standard. On February 7th, EPA issued a final rule stating their intent to lower the annual standard from 12 to 9 micrograms per meter cubed. They are retaining the 24-hour PM 2.5 standard and the PM 10 standards at their current levels. EPA, as part of this action, is also updating the PM 2.5 air quality index scale and monitoring requirements. So with this new standard being put into place, EPA will make designations for different non-attainment areas, and that will trigger a timeline for us to develop a new attainment plan for this standard. It will be building upon our prior efforts. As I mentioned, we've amended a number of rules. 2023 air quality data indicated significant progress towards meeting all of the PM 2.5 standards. However, this new standard will be extremely challenging. A lot of effort will be happening at the district level, the state level, and the federal level. As part of establishing the new standard, EPA published an analysis which included emission reduction measure scenarios for areas such as the San Joaquin Valley with extreme air quality issues. And notably, the measures that they identified fell short of the total needed reductions needed for the valley to attain. So ahead of our new attainment plan deadline, we'll be working closely with CARB and EPA to evaluate our challenges, pursue any needed research and potential emission reduction measures. And again, we'll be continuing to implement our ongoing strategies and rules that we've recently amended, and those reductions will assist us in meeting this new standard as well. So with that, that concludes my update on our planning projects, and I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
All right. Any questions? We'll start with the north.
Emily, it's Chris Savage. Thanks for the presentation. 2 questions, one on the ozone SIP amendments that you've talked about. Do you believe any of those conversations are going to result in an elimination of the supplemental air quality fee that's currently being charged on major sources for non-compliance with the federal program? Or do you see that not being part of the conversation?
And Emily, feel free to add. I need to direct your question at Emily, Chris. Let me give it a shot first, and then see if Emily has more to add to it. You're talking about the section 185.
Yep.
Non-attainment. Yeah. So the current leveraging of those is under the 1 hour ozone context, and so there's a maintenance plan that's been submitted to EPA that, upon their action of that plan, we would anticipate eliminating that obligation, and that's with EPA. It's under their review right now, and our understanding is that it's right. It's with them, and there's no remaining information needed or anything along those lines. It's really up to EPA at this point to act on that. Now the other set of requirements related to that are there's the 2023 attainment deadline for the 1997 8-hour ozone standard, and what happens, I think, coming kind of moving into that next standard, and then longer term down the road will be the 2008 standard and 2015 standard. But as far as the current framework, it's all dependent on EPA's review of the maintenance plan that's already with EPA. Hopefully it answers your question, Chris.
No, it does, and I knew there was going to be subsequence to that. I just wasn't sure if we understood where in the process we were with EPA and would they be acting on that quickly, just because, as you know, that those are significant costs.
Yes.
That are not value-added fees being paid because of EPA's slowness to act, right?
And it's super high priority for us. We're continuing to press, and our understanding is that it's moving forward in a positive fashion, but can't speak for them, but definitely something that we're tracking very closely and engaging in as a high priority. Appreciate the comment.
I appreciate that. And if we can just add that as some kind of regular update for the CAC, just so we know where that stands in negotiating process, that would be helpful. And then Emily, my second question is on the 2024 PM 10 standard. It sounds like from your presentation, there really isn't good line of sight at this point to how we might achieve that. Is that a good summary a ridiculously high-level summary on my part, but a good summary.
Yeah, so as part of the planning process, we'll be working with Carbon EPA to identify measures. At this point, we are looking at some additional modeling scenarios, seeing what sources could be the most impactful, but at this point, we've not nailed any specific measures down.
Okay, and I realize this is going to be an ongoing discussion, and thank you for that. I just, and you'll know this as well as anybody else, but there's going to be some collateral effects, right? So some positive activities that do generate those smaller particulates like compost and other things are, you know, those could come up as control measures that would probably help the PM10 issue or PM2.5 issue, excuse me, but not help the broader efforts in the valley that need to be implemented to manage other parts of, you know, ag byproducts. So thank you. Appreciate the responses.
Hey, Ned?
Very quickly, I can't avoid making the comment when we take a look at the graph on page 6, which, you know, there has been a tremendous reduction in PM 2.5, immense. But of course, you're only showing the winter months when you would have an occasional violation, a very occasional violation of the standards. And I would claim if you had a real frequency distribution of the violations covering the entire 8-county region, it's going to be a heck of a lot less than 7% at any time. Look, we are almost always at the federal standard of 12 micrograms, which is very, very, very low, okay? And now they're going to get us maybe to try and shoot for 9 micrograms per meter cubed. I mean, Lord, this is ridiculous. One day of wildfire, one day is 100% of the anthropogenic PM 2.5 in the valley. So, I mean, you need to put this stuff in some sort of context, folks. And all I can say is they've done a great job. We're very healthy. The cost to get to this, you know, 3 microgram reduction is going to be stupendous. And one day of wildfire is 100% of the anthropogenic PM 2.5. Oh, goodness. Thank you.
All right. Any other comments on the north? The south?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Sorry, I was just going to wait for a second for the south. I don't see anybody. Just a quick clarification, if I may, to Mr. Leba's comment. Slide 6, that's the 24-hour standard, Ned, on that one. Now, that's not to minimize, though, the bigger point that you were making, which is that it is going to be a monumental challenge, and there's going to be big discussions around what it's going to take, cost, and I think the research also, Ned, to your point, and I know you're very consistent on this, but I think over time, we're going to have to continue really making sure we understand a lot of dynamics, you know, as we pull plans together in the future for that latest standard, because I think we want to make sure, you know, that it's informed by policy relevant research that will actually do what, you know, we think, you know, measures that are going to do what we think they're going to do. And I think that's where the research is going to be really important into the future as well. So I didn't want to, just clarification, but also just wanted to echo that there is going to be a lot of conversation to your point. Yeah.
You know, I appreciate that. Really, this is a compliment of how good you guys have done, but you've gotten to a very, very low level, and now they're being asked to go even lower. It's going to be quite expensive. And truthfully, the violation days incidences are low, which is good, but the future is going to be very costly. Thanks.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. This is Manuel here. Samir, or the smoke issue, the agricultural burn, not the wildfire, crazy fires, but the agriculture industry in 2021 came out with a no more ag burn policy. So by the year 25, no more burning unless under special conditions that we allow. That was part of EPA's agreement with us, and one of the contingency was to, in other words, I don't see ag smoke in here as one of those things that we agreed upon to help get, when we pulled the plan back, Where did ag burn suddenly was a big issue? It became one of those, we were the biggest polluter and everything else, and people were dying from smoke and everything. Okay. But it's not mentioned in this part. And by the end of 25, we will have taken X amount of tons burned to where it's going to be even smaller than that graph that you have on the wall. If you looked at, if that was ag burn on the left, and then in 2025, it's going to be the tiny little teeny weeny blue down on the bottom that I think I can see. It's maybe blue, maybe it's black. I don't know. Purple. It's purple.
No, it's
Okay.
blue.
It's blue. Okay. So it's even going to be smaller than that. We have issues with it, with ag burn, from the standpoint of equipment and the standpoint of timelines and diseases, and we don't have any more biomass per se facilities out there to take this product. And we're eventually going to load our system with chips and we can't put it down anymore. I have an issue with the discussion that, is it part of the SIP discussion, is Sigma. What is Sigma going to be doing to us to try to develop more stringent ag activity? Sigma is going to hurt us all, but especially the farmers. We're feeling it now. We're feeling some of the GSAs. Big issues. How did that fit into here? Because I didn't see it, but man, they came after you guys, after us. And we had to reduce all the ag burn. And by this whatever percentage, right? But yet prescribed fires, as Mr. Lieberman said, is massive. What one of those fires does in a day or two. I don't know how much more to say about that. Is that you ask us to do this, are they going to come after us more into contingency, which means how much more are they going to ask us to do when we can't go any further because there's only so much land and we're not forcing, the regulations are telling us what we can't do, and that's causing the problem, being Sigma. 1 million acres by 2030. I don't know where I put 1 million acres of material that's going to be abandoned, and abandonment causes diseases and it causes other concerns for our industry. So Samir or Emily, I don't, am I off the track of where is it?
Mr. Chair, if I could, just a quick response.
Yeah.
That's okay with you?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so Manuel, this presentation, I think is going to be, first of all, one of many, because I think as the plans develop, there's going to need to be a way to kind of break down the, so for example, what we didn't do here, and to your point, is really try to describe, outside of that chart that shows the big reductions in pollution, try to describe the variety of things that are included in these plans that are achieving all that tremendous benefit. The ag burn phase out is one of them. It's actually in all the PM plans, the recent plans. It's actually integrated into the plan to really show, you know, that ongoing benefit through the end of this year and then and beyond. So, and then the new plan will also continue to reflect the benefit and the hard work of Valley Agriculture to keep working on that phase out. And then the challenges are a big ongoing discussion as well. So I don't want to minimize that, but I think we're going to have to keep talking about those challenges and what do we do together to keep supporting our agriculture and dealing with those issues. Contingency, just a quick note on that, to try to also make sure the CAC members are fully conversant on this aspect of already very complicated planning requirements. So contingency is a little different than what's in the plan. It's a part of the plan, but contingency are those measures that you adopt and you hold in reserve in the event that, say, you don't meet the standard by the end of the plan. If we don't hit our goals and for some reason we can't meet that standard, then contingency would basically be in place. And so for contingency, it's very difficult, as you could imagine. We already have the toughest regulations here. We don't keep a lot of things in reserve. They're not just sitting there, you know, in our pocket waiting to be used, you know, down the road. There could be significant cost and impact to small business, to the chair's point earlier. And so trying to navigate this specific issue in an environment like the Valley that already has a very mature air quality program in place, has always been very difficult. And other parts of the country now are also facing the same difficulty as they have to also now move forward with some of the newer standards. So for contingency, because we already have these other measures like the ag burn phase out and other things in the actual plan, they're not measures that are in the contingency package, right? And I just want to differentiate the two things. Now, for the ozone package that is out for review right now, and we anticipate going to our board here in April, there were a couple of things. There were an exemption or two that impact, very small categories of coatings. We took a look at these very carefully. We've engaged. So there's a couple of things that we actually have in the package to basically make sure that we satisfy the federal requirements. But what we haven't done is put any of these other measures into that package because we already have them and they're already reflected in the plan. And so I just wanted to kind of differentiate between the two and just explain how the two kind of work together. And anybody who's more interested in those points, we can talk about that further here now, or feel free to, we can engage after as well, because it is a very complicated set of requirements. Emily, I think, tried to kind of boil it down to the main things that are going on right now. But these are pretty long-term and very, kind of weedy issues. Every one of these plans, as Chris's question as well on the ozone piece, a lot of complexity to each of these issues. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time on that.
Yeah. Was that Central? South? Any questions from the Central?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Emily, on what we were just talking about, going from 12 to 9, did they give a justification for that in our particular area? And did they give us a timeline?
Yeah, great questions. So lowering the standard is based on the latest health science. It's not based on the challenges in specific regions. So they have a panel of different scientists, doctors, experts in air quality problems and public health impacts, and they review the latest health science and lower the standard based on what is the most protective of public health. So it is not based on challenges of specific regions, although they do have a separate analysis that looks into what could be done in specific areas to get them into attainment. As far as the timeline goes, so the standard was published in February of this year. EPA has up to 2 years to make designations of non-attainment or attainment for different areas. And then following that, it should be about 2026 timeframe. Around 2027, our first plan for moderate area requirements should be due. So it is based on when EPA makes those initial designations. That sets the timeline for when attainment plans will be due.
So it's a national standard. Just want to make sure. I think it was clear with that response, but yeah, it's not like specific to the area, although obviously we're impacted by the standard, but it's across the entire country.
Okay.
Is there a plan to do any economic impacts on any of that? Just going down from 12 to 9, do they have a plan for that? The health committee looked at it. Has the socioeconomic committee looked at that?
Yeah, so there's, again, through the chair, sorry, like a little bit more time on this. I know we're kind of hitting up against the clock here.
Yes, we are.
So there was, and I don't want to take ownership over what EPA put out, but I'm just going to try to tell you what we understood EPA. So there was documentation that came out with the new standard. One of the pieces of the documentation was a characterization of the challenge. And so, to your earlier question, EPA did do some review. They looked at a few potential measures at a very high level, and their conclusion was that they themselves could not identify what reductions would be needed from where to actually be able to meet the standard. So that's our understanding, meaning that we all have to now, work very hard to figure that out. The other piece is that part of their documentation, I think at a pretty cursory level, did take a look at, I think, both the health benefits and at a very high level, they looked at cost and health benefit, a monetized, sort of benefit. So there's an appendix that's got, kind of a lengthy write-up on that. Now, as you move forward with a plan and as you move forward with any regulatory measure, there's also the socioeconomic work that has to go into every other thing that happens from this point forward. And that is something that, we would have to do, for example, with any rule that we would want to consider down the road. And I would imagine the state would have to do that as well, and at the federal level as well. So there's high level, and then as you kind of move forward through things, there's more of that as well.
Thank you. Any other questions, South? Okay, let's move on to item 12. Receive update on the district's zero emission landscape equipment program. Todd.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Brian Dodds. I'm program manager here in our grants and incentives department. Excuse me. So I'm here to talk about our commercial lawn and garden program that we have for operators of commercial grade equipment. And while this type of equipment, or the engines that power this type of equipment more specifically, represent only about 10% of the small engine population across the state, they contribute 70% of the emissions from this category. So there's a lot of use and a lot of emissions coming from engines that power commercial lawn and garden equipment. And these emissions typically occur in neighborhoods throughout the valley, with approximately 40% of residential lawn maintenance handled by commercial service providers. But also there's significant activities at parks and schools and commercial areas, retail facilities. So I'm sure you've noticed as you're out in your daily business that there is a lot of commercial lawn and garden activity going on around you. And the district has long been a leader in efforts to reduce emissions from commercial landscape equipment and help in the transition to zero emission equipment. Back in 2010, we successfully competed for $250,000 in state funding to really do one of the first zero emission demonstration projects in the state. We've held a zero emission lawn and garden conference back in 2012, and in 2019, as the state of zero emission equipment had really materialized to a solid point, we launched our commercial lawn and garden program at the time. And through that initial program, we funded about 550 pieces of equipment, so replacing the gas-powered equipment with zero-emission electric equipment. Through the state Carl Moyer program, which provides incentives for a wide variety of equipment to be replaced, we received $6.1 million in statewide funding out of 24.7 available that was specifically designated for zero emission lawn and garden equipment. And this also helps support state regulations requiring equipment manufacturers to have zero equipment starting this year. And this emission reductions is achieved by taking the old gas powered equipment out of service and replacing it with zero emission technology. And so we have about $6.1 million specifically designated for this zero emission lawn and garden equipment. As part of accepting that funding, we rebranded our commercial lawn and garden equipment to the Zero Emission Landscape Equipment Voucher Program. We've had this open for not quite a year now. And this, again, provides vouchers or incentives for landscapers, public agencies, businesses that might perform their own landscape maintenance, really a wide variety of users to replace their old gas-powered equipment and receive incentives towards the purchase of new electric options. Since this program launched last May, we've awarded over $2.3 million in funding to replace over 920 pieces of equipment. So we've got a little bit less than $4 million left in our available funds for this particular program. Eligible entities for this program is really a wide variety of users. It can be residential service providers, it can be businesses, it could be ag users who utilize gas-powered equipment to maintain their orchards and other types of ag-related activities. Businesses, nonprofit organizations that might provide commercial scale maintenance on their own. So really and of anybody who's using commercial grade equipment to maintain their operations or provide a service for commercial equipment. In addition, cities, counties, special districts, school districts are eligible to apply that are doing this type of activity in-house. They must be located and conduct 100% of their operations within the San Joaquin Valley Air District. They have to currently use gas or diesel-powered commercial grade landscape equipment in their operations and have owned and operated their old equipment for the past 2 years. Incentives for the program can range up from $700 for edgers or string trimmers, hedge trimmers, those types of piece of equipment, up to $15,000 for ride-on and stand-on mowers. And so there's quite a bit of an incentive there to replace that existing equipment. The old equipment, it must be gas or diesel powered. And there's a variety of types of equipment, including edgers, chainsaws, pole saws, leaf blowers, vacuums, and walk behind and ride on mowers that are eligible. The new equipment must be the same type of device as the old equipment. So if we're replacing or if we're providing an incentives for a hedge trimmer, we want to take an old hedge trimmer out of service, and we do a like for like or one for one type of replacement. They need to be purchased from a manufacturer, authorized retailer, or dealer, but we give a lot of flexibility. So if you're, we want people to be able to shop around and get the best deal for them. There's not a specific list of retailers that they have to go through, just has to be a manufacturer or authorized retailer. It's got to be electric, battery-powered device, and it must be new or not previously owned or used. These are just some visual examples of the type of equipment that might be eligible for funding through this program. Again, the ride-on lawn mowers, hedge trimmers. A lot of commercial operators use push-behind mowers as well, so those are certainly eligible. The process for participating in the program is really straightforward. We require just the submittal of a completed application along with supporting documentation. Once approved, the applicant would receive a voucher and a claim for payment form. They can then go purchase their new equipment, and the old equipment has to be delivered to a dismantler within 30 days. They submit a claim for payment form for reimbursement within the 30-day window of purchasing the new equipment. And then they are required to own and operate the equipment for a minimum of 36 months from the date of usage. And with advances in this type of technology to this point, many of these types of equipment really can replace a gas-powered equivalent and be used for a full day's work. We've done a lot of outreach over the last year to help support implementation of the program. We've gone to a number of in-person outreach events, and these events are really beneficial in that they allow the end users to have the opportunity for really hands-on usage of the equipment and dialogue with equipment manufacturers. The picture that you see here, that at this event, people were able to get on, ride on lawn mowers, test them out at the facility, use the type of equipment that was available, really get to understand the power and the use that equipment would provide them. But there are ongoing opportunities for the CAC to assist the district in outreach, connections to landscape maintenance organizations, owner-operators, school districts, and other commercial users, as well as city and county parks departments and other types of public agencies that might be able to utilize this equipment in their operations. So with that will conclude my presentation for this morning, and happy to answer any questions that the committee may have.
All right, any questions from the South?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go
I
ahead.
know you're trying to get all the commercial operators that do lawn and stuff in the neighborhoods or whatever they go to. But what I have a question is, how come the state don't implement their own deal? I go to different rest areas and different and state facilities, and I see gas, lawnmowers, trimmers, you name it, blowers, all gas. Why don't they take care of their own and see what commercial operators are up against, how long the stuff lasts? That'd be my question on that.
Good question. No answer?
Okay, I'm sorry, was that a question or a comment?
Yeah, my comment was, what come the state don't do what they're trying to make us do? You know,
Yeah,
other
okay.
facilities all by gas, everything. You see, it's all gas.
Yeah, no, I think
That would
I
probably
think it's
cut
a
down a
good
little bit.
question. I intend on asking the state, but I think it's a good question. I do want to say, you know, from a regulatory perspective, which is not our rule, to be clear, it's a CARB rule, but it's a I'm trying to find the terminology
So
here.
it's a purchase
A
requirement.
purchase requirement,
Right.
yeah. So basically, as
Point of sale.
a point of sale requirement. That's the word. Thank you, Brian. So I think at the beginning of next
Of 24, manufacturers have to offer zero emission equipment.
is the beginning of
for sale.
25 though. I think it's the first of. So we'll get you the detail on that. But basically, whether you're the state or anybody, at that point, if you're buying a new piece of equipment, it's going to have to be zero emissions. So I think everybody's going to be subject to that. But as to what the state is doing and whether or not they're transitioning and all that, I think that's a great question for the state to answer, which I'm happy to ask that question.
Okay, anybody else in South? Central?
Yes, great comment, Samir. I think I'll go back to the question. You're right about 25, 26 year, no more. Some industries will have a longer time. I think we have to be, I think the state did the same thing with the truck roll. No logger that has a 48-inch bar, chainsaw bar, trimming dead trees in the forest is going to have a battery operated chainsaw. That's insane because of the amount of work that it has to do with the chain, et cetera, et cetera. And to be caught with a chainsaw running out of power in the middle of a fall is insanity at the greatest. I guess the chainsaw person is going to run on the other side of the tree and try to hold the tree up till his friends can come over and pull the chainsaw out, I guess. So they didn't think through this. But my question, Ryan, maybe, Samira, we talked about this. We're going to put all these people, businesses, into electrifying their equipment. We help them with those costs because the cost of that electric equipment is going to escalate. There is no doubt about that. For somebody to tell me, oh no, it's going to, the more you sell, the cheaper it is. Not in this state and not in this economy. Is there any thought by ARB, because this is their program, about helping that person that kept their thing running for 36 months? We don't know if that edger is going to work for 36 months just due to mechanicals, due to the conditions, the heat, the coolness of the battery, all of those wild things. Has CARB come back to you and said, we're also going to have, when that piece of equipment wears out, you bring it in and we're going to give you an incentive to help you repurchase another one. Okay? No, there's nothing. I'm just looking at your face. It looks like you just got hit by a deers in the headlights or something. And Samir is not wanting to say too much on that, but to me, we're going to give $6 million and we're going to make them do all this. And then what do they do down the line when the cost continuously goes up? The piece of equipment doesn't work. How do they maintain their business of taking care of the landscape stuff, the whole entire issue? Has there been discussion with CARB giving a incentive after you purchase it to help them get into the second one so they don't try to? Now, are they going to go outside? Is the gas patrol, highway patrolman going to ticket a landscaper? I hope I don't use my police department and my sheriff's department to go out and ticket for CARB. If CARB wants to monitor, go hire a bunch of people and run them around the damn state, ticking a person for not having a gas rig. But I'm just furious at this issue because I understand the pollution absolutely is huge. but we're just taking businesses and throwing them out there, taking away what they got, but yet we don't have a future plan how to keep them going, if that's our intent for electrification, okay? Some industries cannot. My industry cannot have a stupid battery. I'm sorry, it can't. I have to deal with Mother Nature. The forest has to deal with Mother Nature. To tell a forester that he has to have a chainsaw that is electric at the amount of power they need and the preciseness of that tree coming down, they can't wait. So I'm sorry for the district.
No, Mr. Chair, could I make a suggestion on that, kind of based on Manuel's comments?
Sure.
I think if there's enough interest, thank you so much. If there's enough interest from the CAC members on maybe keeping an eye on this transition and engaging, with CARB on what happens, because I do think the first deadlines start hitting at the end of this year, and then, like you're saying, they phase out over time. So to your specific question, this funding certainly would not be available for. We're going to spend the money, I would anticipate, over the next year, and then you're talking about 3 years from now for projects. But I do think the comment and suggestion is one of, I would imagine, many that would need to be heard and perhaps factored into the broader discussion around the transition and how do you make sure that it's successful. I also think there's going to be a revisit, probably, like you mentioned. There's different categories of their sectors and where's technology, today or by the end of the year. And I think there does have to be an ongoing discussion about that. Now, this program, to be clear, is really just focused on the voluntary program. If anybody's interested in, you may have a fleet of, 10, 20, 30 pieces of equipment. You may want to try out a couple of these, which is often what we see to kind of get acquainted with technology, see if it works for you. We've had it's actually been over the last 6 months or so that we've seen a pretty tremendous uptick in applications and interest from folks that really do want to just try the technology. Gas prices go up. There's maintenance, a lot more maintenance on the gas powered over electric. So I think if a lot of operators, if they can make it work, will want to make it work. Now, that's not comment on the state regulation. That's just more of a technology comment and more around what you're seeing becoming available from these commercial providers that do provide, the extra battery pack, the maintenance, the fuel. It is definitely a consideration for operators. So the larger conversation around what happens here as we transition, that is something that if the CAC was interested in that, we could try to, again, it's an invitation to CARB in this case to see if they're open to coming in, maybe talking about that transition, going back to the earlier discussion and just inviting them to engage with the CAC on that issue. And that could be where your comment fits into that as well.
Mr. Chairman, in regards to Mr. Samir's comments, absolutely. So I want it on the record. Let's send a formal letter, I guess, to whoever, I guess it's a deputy, Dr. Steve Cliff, requesting that in the next CAC meeting, we have a qualified person who knows about the program to come on with Laura Carr and give us what they are thinking and doing and how this works statewide. If we have to do that in writing, or do we have to do it in Braille? How do I make it clear that I don't have to now, or the CAC doesn't have to go, I don't know, enact a subpoena, I guess, subpoena the staff to come to the CAC meeting?
Mr. Chair, what we could do is, just to offer an idea on that, we could, on behalf of the chair and the CAC, offer that invitation and keep the chair posted on the response and between this meeting and the next meeting, and just, now you could also send a letter. There's whatever the CAC would like to do on that, but we could just immediately, make that invitation just based on direction from you, Mr. Chair, but also from the CAC as a whole, if there's support for, general support for that.
Okay. Well, I have a question. If we submit a letter, does that require a vote of the entire board? Or can I just ask you to have that conversation with CARB?
I would anticipate, I think to be safe, you'd probably want to take action on that, formal action, if you wanted to submit a letter, and just make sure that the direction was clear as to what to include in that letter as maker of the motion, whoever wants to make that motion. But I'd probably lean on, my recommendation to you, Mr. Chair, would be to probably take some formal action on that. If you wanted to extend an invitation in the form of a letter, as opposed to, a little bit less formal, approach for that.
I move that we send a formal letter and be signed by the chair immediately.
I second.
Okay,
Just to make
All
sure
right, we
that, and
have
that, well, that letter would, could you, maybe it would be a request that CARB engages with the CAC on the state's regulation, zero emission, small engine or small off-road engine. I think that's what it's called, the SOAR regulation, yeah.
yeah, we have a motion and
Okay,
a second.
all right, so let's just make this good. Let's just do it. I also
Well,
would add to that
Manuel?
request. Yeah, yes,
Manuel,
yes.
I don't think the board has a problem with that, but I think it needs to be more specific as to what the letter is going to address or request.
We just want, qualified, the department that is in charge of this rule, come to us and present the program requirements of this rule. I secondly add to that, the bus and truck rule. That means we don't have enough paper, but we want someone qualified that knows the rule, knows the law. I mean, I feel so saddened that your staff, Samir.
You're making a motion.
Oh, God, that's right. Just a motion on that. I'll stop.
And address the.
And I second
Okay.
that amendment.
Okay.
For any action items, Mr. Chair, we do have to call for public comments. So
Yeah.
are there any members of the public in Modesto that would like to comment on this motion?
No comments in Modesto.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Bakersfield that would like to comment on this motion?
No public comment in Bakersfield.
Thank you. Are there any members of the public in Fresno that would like to comment on this motion?
And,
None, and none online.
Mr. Chair, before we move to vote on the item, another quick clarification. It's very quick. On the truck regulation, are you talking about the advanced clean fleet? There's different regulations. I'm assuming you're talking about the advanced clean fleets regulation. Okay, just want to make sure. Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
all right.
And before we vote, I'd like to at least get a clarification. Can that also include whoever the representative is, be in a position to discuss the consequences that Mr. Cunha has brought up and the effects we're going to have at the various ports? Is that correct, Mr. Cunha?
Yes, good luck. Don't put that in.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Okay. Mr. Cunha,
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Clark,
Yes.
Ms. Lopes,
Yes.
Mr. Hofstall,
Yes.
Mr. Savage has left the meeting. Mr. Rios,
Yes.
Ms. Deming,
Yes.
Ms. Holmes,
Yes.
Mr. Liba,
Yes.
Ms. Agers,
Yes.
Mr. Cryer,
Yes.
Ms. Morrow,
Yes.
Mr. Troost,
Yes.
Mr. Delgadillo,
Yes.
Mr. Cantu,
Yes.
Mr. O'Brien,
Yes.
Mr. Maderos.
Yes.
Through the chair, motion passes.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item 13, AB 617 implementation updates. Stephanie, can you give us a really short report?
Hi, I'll keep it brief. Thank you, everyone. It's just, so my name is Stephanie Ng, and I'm a program manager in the Community Strategies and Resources Department. Some quick updates. As just a little bit of background, CARB has 4 selected communities: Fresno, Shafter, Stockton, and Arvin Lamont, and we work with a Community Steering Committee, or CSC, which is made up of residents, businesses, community-based organizations, other agencies, and that we kind of work together to implement clean air strategies. For all of these communities, we are in the implementation phase, and one exciting update I have is that in all 4 communities, we are getting ready to launch both the passenger vehicle repair and passenger vehicle replace programs, and expect by the end of the month that'll be available. It's really exciting because it is a really, resident-based incentive program that we have that lots of folks are ready and excited to take advantage of. We are also continuing in-person meetings, which again are crucial opportunities to engage with community members and also to build really important relationships with businesses and various agencies. In fact, we have one of these meetings tomorrow in Stockton, at the Port of Stockton. We planned a port tour with kind of the staff at the port ahead of the meeting. And for the meeting, we have some exciting exercises to move forward SERP implementation. And so we're really excited for that meeting. Those are all the quick updates I have for you. And we also, I believe, have CARB joining us as well for some updates on their side.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie. I'll try and make it quick as well. Hi, all. It's good to see you again. My name is Brian Moore, and I'm a manager in the Office of Community Air Protection at CARB. So I just have 2 updates from CARB on the AB 617 program. One is an update on the program incentive guidelines revisions, and the second is on an upcoming program evaluation. So first, on the incentive guidelines update, a public workshop was held on March 19th, so about a week ago, to go over the draft revisions to the incentive guidelines. And we expect the final updated guidelines should be released in mid-April, which I can share with the CAC when they're finished. The second update is that since we're at the 5-year mark of the Community Air Protection Program, a third-party evaluator will be conducting an extensive program eval. And this project is just getting underway, and so I'll have more updates to come as it progresses. And that concludes my updates. So please feel free to ask any questions, and I'll do my best to answer. So thank you.
No questions. Thank you. Move on to 14, outreach and communication reports. Jamie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jamie Holt. I'm with the Outreach and Communications team. I'll be quick as well. Happy Everything Month. It's Earth Day. We're about to get into Air Quality Awareness Week. We're about to get into Bike to Work Week. So there are over 30 events up and down the valley that we're going to be at. If we've missed yours, let me know. If we have staff available, we'll be certain to send them out there. So lots of work going on with regard to actually being out in the community right now. And we continue to do quite a bit of work giving presentations at schools and working with our Healthier Living school partners. We usually wrap this up kind of towards the end of school, make sure they have everything they need so that when we really get into it during that back to school window, it will be hot. Hopefully it won't be smoky, knock on wood, everybody, but we're working with our schools to have those relationships in place so that we can move forward if and when we do hit wildfire season. We also have meetings coming up in the May, June timeframe with our public health officers. We sit on a public outreach committee for a consortium of public health agencies up and down the valley, and we'll be meeting directly with them just to make sure we're all on the same page for wildfire season. That's it, and be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
Oh, I have a
All
quick
right,
question.
move on to the next item.
Oh, wait.
15.
Through the chair, we have a comment from a
question.
member in Fresno.
Yeah, Kalish.
Yes.
Just a quick question. When is the Bike to Work Week?
Bike to Work Week is going to be the second week in May, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know the dates on that. I don't have it in front of me, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you. Item 15, CAC member comments. South?
I do have a comment, a general comment and stuff. Now, myself, I represent all the cities in Kern County. And a lot of these cities, including mine, a lot of businesses are leaving and we're trying to backfill them. Even in Stanislaus County, I do business there. I have a manufacturing company there in Stanislaus County, and I do business there. And I also, for example, I'll get castings out of Lodi. And now that company got bought out. Our castings went from $6 and some change up to $33 and some change a piece for each one of them. And I'm at the point on that, I'm having to source another location in Washington, out of town of Spokane. And because I can't compete, I can't buy that product, sell it to my customers or manufacture it in the component and compete. And so a lot of us is moving out of California or restart some of our products and stuff out of the state. We need to work on be saying about what's going on, that what we do, there's always a reaction. whoever action that the board here takes. And we need to look on the size, what is a cost benefit versus a cost loss on each things that we approve of. And, because pretty soon we'll get our net zero, but we're gonna have any more businesses here in our state. But, it's, even the restaurants, you know, serve food, you know, you can't use gas, I gotta go, you have to get away from gas, they have to have different scrubbers for the stuff that, the smoke they create in their store. They cost money. I know I had a restaurant one time, I'm glad I got sold it, but just for one little thing, it's $30,000, just keep the smoke from, you know, catch it and the grease and stuff, traps and stuff out of that one business deal. But it's a tough world out here in California. We just need to see what we do, because we got all the lower limbs, all the fruit off the lower limbs. Yet we've got a little bit down below that we're trying to achieve, but how much, at what cost, and at what expense, and how much we're going to lose to our stakeholders here in California that are looking at leaving California if they haven't left already. Because I deal with a lot of different businesses, a trucking business and agricultural business, especially in this agricultural. It is a tough world out there to meet all the standards and mandates that's put upon us. I just want to make that comment on that, because it's good that we're doing things, but make it where it's cost benefit along with it. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Anybody else in the South? All right, Central?
Yes, I'd like to finish my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the suggestion to move down here. As brought up, I think my frustration that I was venting before, and I'll keep this brief, was that the regulations we have are aimed at the private sector, and I feel sometimes communication doesn't take place intergovernmental with what the consequences are that also relates to emissions and the inconvenience that's involved. In no circumstance on a major freeway or state route like Highway 41 should it be completely shut for 6 months without a completion of a bridge that shouldn't be that tough to build. And the effect on emissions is significant with the detour they have that's 15 minutes to a half hour is with tractor trailer rigs, cars, people traveling. Everybody's inconvenienced under those circumstances. And this governmental agency should be communicating with Caltrans, another governmental agency, to at least see if this could be moved up and moved along. And that's what I wanted to bring to the attention of the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in Central? North?
Quick one.
Go ahead.
I know I made comments towards CARB in the port operations. I would like to also make a recommendation of solution, at least temporary, is have CARB work with the port authorities to give priority over what vehicles and what modes of transportation they want to have into their ports, but not restrict it to where the containers do not move at the normal pace. You can start off with the priorities of zero emission vehicles and then move down the tiers, and then always give the zero emission vehicles or the zero emission tugs priority in operations. That's way you'll keep it going and not do the hindrance that is envisioned not only by this body, but by a lot of others. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I went before the Board of Supervisors and the mayors for the County of Merced, and I presented them this booklet. And some of them have never seen it before. And so when I was there, I strongly recommended that the Board of Supervisors and the City Council should get this. And so one of our supervisors, Lloyd Pereira, which is also a board member for the Valley Air District, he took responsibility to take care of the County of Merced, and he did. So I'm mentioning this so you can also do the same for your counties. And on my way home this afternoon, I'm gonna stop with the superintendent of schools. So maybe we can also do the same thing for the children.
Mr. Chair, for those of us, Mr. Chair, for those of us that are not at your site, could you identify what the book is?
But this one is, this is for the children's calendar. This is their own drawing, and they show their own drawings that the kids about safety, about the environment. And this one here is, I just got it from outside. This is a 2024 Healthy Air Living Kids Calendar. And this one is the 2022, that's 2023 information for the community. And it's also printed in Spanish and English.
Mr. Chair, really quick, at our upcoming April board meeting, we're going to be approving, hopefully, through the board's review of the latest annual report to the community. And we do distribute it out to all the clerks, but I think as I hear the comments, the question is, how do we make sure there's even wider, dissemination so that everybody sees that? So we'll definitely make sure the CAC also gets a copy of the latest annual report. And then if you wouldn't mind, if you're interested in sharing that maybe with your constituencies and others that you think would want to see that. It's actually a really good, I would call more layperson's summary of the different activities that go on locally, especially like the work that we do. It's hard to cover all the issues, but the work that we do certainly. And I think it's really good for the public to see, that the businesses in the valley, agriculture and others are working hard. The air quality is improving. We try to recognize those efforts and different investments that are being made. So it's a really great resource. I appreciate the comment being raised, and I think we'll keep looking for ways to better disseminate that information. So I appreciate that.
Okay, anybody else in the north? Yes, please.
I have I guess a question or a comment. It kind of goes back to the zero emission. We talked about that 36 months that the equipment is supposed to last that time, which is kind of a blanketed number. And if you see the vast types of equipment, I would think that there's a difference between, whether something's going to last a year or whether something's going to last 3 years. Maybe some equipment can last 5. Are we going to be tracking that, having people have the ability to say that their piece of equipment didn't last that amount of time, whether the batteries aren't going to last? I work in other regulatory groups, and so a lot of times we have really good air regulation, but then we go back to cause and effect. So we have this really good effect on air, but we later cause issues with, now it's going to be hazardous waste that everybody's going to be dealing with these batteries. It's eventually going to maybe cause groundwater contamination when they're, going to these landfills or whatever they're ending up. So I would really like to recommend that we keep track of this information. Again, we're going more battery, everything needs electricity and infrastructure. We talked about, the logging industry and not being able to utilize some of this equipment, but for those of us in ag, you might not have a power source. So what happens when you need to use this piece of equipment? Are we pulling out a generator, which kind of goes against what we're wanting to do here, because we now need to charge a battery to do the work. So those are just the things that I would like to be taken into consideration and to gather data. So when we're looking at the cost of things, we can show whether technology is there, is it moving in the right direction? And then maybe also note that a blanket amount of time for a variety of pieces of equipment isn't a good strategy, I guess, to put into a program like that.
Mr. Chair, could I respond to that?
Absolutely.
I definitely want to make sure. Thank you so much. Just talking to staff to make sure I'm right about what I'm about to say. So we do have a lot of flexibility in that program to deal with the 36-month requirement issue. And so for those here who've had any experience working with us on some of the other replacement programs, and this one in particular is more of a pilot, so I think there's a learning aspect to it. So I think your comments are right on target. Whatever we can learn, we'll definitely be documenting the bigger issues around batteries and like life cycle disposal and other things that I think are really great questions to be having also with the state as we engage maybe on some of the broader, kind of statewide implementation. But certainly in the 36 months, that's the expectation. But something doesn't last that long. It's a year or two. We have flexibility to work with that operator. We can figure out, how to, everything from closing out the project if there isn't another solution that that we could work out in terms of maybe under warranty, get a replacement part or whatever it might be, or just try to address the issue. So just want to provide that assurance that as we think about these programs, that we've been able to be very successful and very service oriented in how we deal with the partners that take advantage of these funds. So please, if we can figure out a way in our materials to also make that clear, so that we don't scare anybody away, from maybe being concerned about that time frame. I think we'll look at that as a suggestion as well.
Thank you.
Just to kind of take what Mrs. Holmes there is stated one step further, when I receive your reports, the staff's reports, I get all the technical numbers and knowledges and reasons and all that. But I think the element that's missing from those reports is what effect is that having upon other issues, as pointed out, the state's infrastructure for more electrical demand, the length of the effects of a program on lawnmowers. I understand the 3-year limit and all that, but what I gather from a public member is that after 3 years, nobody gives a damn. Okay, so those are the elements that I think, if you can, add to your report, but don't add another page. Just take out some of the technical stuff that makes a good report. The last item is we need a volunteer to present report. Yes.
I'm going to give you a call. I'm going to circle with you on that. I definitely want to make sure I understand exactly what you're saying there, because
okay.
So we don't have to belabor this meeting, but I do,
Yeah.
You're trying to provide some direction and a suggestion there. So I will circle with you on that. I appreciate it.
All right. By the way, Samir, where are you located? Are you in Fresno?
Yeah, I'm personally located in Fresno. Yes.
Okay. Do you ever come to the north?
Yes.
You do? Well, when you come
Yes.
to the north, give me a call and we'll go out to have some lunch and I'll tell you how I see the world.
Yeah, I'll take you to lunch. Sounds good.
All right. Thank you. By the way, I've been to Fresno and it's okay to pass through.
I went to kindergarten in Turlock, just for full disclosure. So.
Okay, there you go. Small world, you're right. Volunteer to present report during governing board meeting. I think I missed the last one. I don't know if anybody here knows that, but for some reason I didn't get the communication and nobody showed up and everybody was upset with me. So if somebody wants to volunteer, if not, I guess I'll try to make this one.
Mr. Chair, just to help you, if you are not able to make it, give me a call, and we just about attend every board meeting. We try not to miss any, but if you can't and you need someone, I'd be happy to help you whatever we can. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Manuel. All right, I think we're done. The next meeting will be May 7th at 10 a.m. No gavel. Meeting adjourned.